Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
It's time for another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. This is Michael James, and we are recording on Wednesday, the 22nd, for our show for the week of February 25th. We'll be on WLUW, aired and streamed on CAN TV, a lot of places, Spotify, Google Podcast, and youtube.com/heartlandmedia/videos. Normally we're recording from Chicago, but I confess to being in the city of my birth, which is New York. But our guests today, Chuy Garcia and Don Rose, are both in Chicago, as is our engineer, Hal James. So I'm really thankful to all of them to help make this show possible. We do welcome all you friends, you neighbors, you comrades, all citizens of the world, wherever you may be. And we're glad that you're either listening in or watching one way or another. Been a pretty big week the past week, both on the tragedy front as well as on the good side. I'm going to go to some good stuff first. I came to New York so that I could drive down to Washington, D.C. with my son, Jesse, and his husband, Gus, and their daughter, my granddaughter, Olympia. And Olympia is a young volleyball player on a club team, and we went to Washington, D.C. for a tournament at the convention center where there were 900 teams, all young women, and 200 courts. It was quite a scene. While we were there, we watched a lot of volleyball. We went out to a lot of nice restaurants. We walked around. I got in a lot more walking than I usually do. And we went to the Smithsonian, and we went to the National Portrait Gallery and saw some really wonderful portraits. Russell Means from the American Indian Movement, Marian Anderson, Obama, Jimmy Carter. Was thinking about him because he had just gone home, left a place of hospice to go home. So I hope he's okay and sticks around a little longer. But Washington, D.C., being in the nation's capital is always a fun treat for me. There's a lot of young people there working in government. It's a good place to go and a good place to visit. On the not so good front, on the tragic front, Turkey had another earthquake. I did hear a podcast while we were driving up the New Jersey Turnpike on NPR that talked about the difficulties of getting aid to northern Syria and the complications that the UN has with the Syrian government and how they are dealing with that crisis, which is just seemingly magnified. I also, on a real sad note, not sad, but I thought good, was Biden went to Kyiv in Ukraine on the one-year anniversary of the beginning of the Ukraine war, and then he went to Poland. But Putin also announced while this was going on that he was suspending participation in a program called New START, which was the last remaining nuclear non-proliferation treaty with the U.S. And that's a kind of a sad thing because you think that these people would at least be talking to each other in some kind of a way. One of the crucial things that we want to talk about is voting. And this is it, kids. We, and I say kids, meaning all of us, on the 28th, which is Tuesday, is the Chicago election for mayor, for alderpersons, other citywide offices, as well as the police district councils. So I encourage you to dig deep and find out about the police community councils and the alderpersons who are running in your particular ward. You can go online and find out all the information that you need. This is an important election. It will help to shape our lives in the city of Chicago and beyond for time to come. Voting in Wisconsin. Yesterday, when we're recording on the 22nd, so it was on Tuesday, the 21st, there was an election in Wisconsin for a member of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. One of the people is stepping down, a conservative, and this election between a liberal, her name is Janet Protasewicz, and a guy named Daniel Kelly, who was an election denier and lost his last election for the Supreme Court there in Wisconsin. They will be in a runoff on April 4th, which is the same date of the Chicago runoff, assuming none of our candidates get 50% plus one. So up in Wisconsin, the conservatives have been in power for a while. They've shaped the legislature, they've banned abortions, and they've been doing this since 2008. And this new election with Janet Protasewicz will be a 10-year election, and if she wins, the Supreme Court there will be divided 3-2 with the liberals in control. And it's perhaps one of the most consequential races that we're going to be seeing. And the two liberals together got 54%, and the two conservatives got 46%. So it bodes well, but it's going to take a lot of work. I do want to say that Nigeria is Africa's largest economy. There are 94 million potential voters. It's one of the world's largest democracies, and they are voting for a new leader. So they also have a number of issues going on in that country that we're learning more about. So we'll keep you informed, and next week we'll tell you who won and what we learned. Now let's go to our book section. And today we're not going to do book reviews. We're going to talk about book banning. A little bit of news from Texas, which usually isn't that good. After being blindsided by the town administration, which privatized their library, the residents of Huntsville have regrouped and formed an organization called Public First in order to fight back and reclaim their town's public goods and public spaces. About the library, they put out information that says who we are. We are a diverse group of Huntsville citizens who have come together to do the following: educate the public about the library and its services, stop and educate everyone about book bans and censorship, educate the public about the issues facing the library, and shine a light on the fact that the city council no longer is representing the citizens of Huntsville, but instead are representing their own beliefs. I got that from the Public Interest, and that's info@inthepublicinterest.org. And on a similar note, also in Texas, the city council in Odessa is a place of a right-wing takeover of the city council, and there has been a mass exodus of city employees, including the city manager and the fire chief. And moving right along on the environment. Got a lot of emails, and one of the things that I got this week was from the Sierra Club, and they talked about toxic pollution from the inactive wells, and there are thousands of them around the country. So if you go to Sierra Club, you'll find that information. They're encouraging people to write letters and stand on certain positions. Also on climate change, here's a report that I got from Coral Davenport, and I believe it's in the New York Times. And it was on February 18th. It reports that on a drought in the Southwest here in the United States, the shrinking of the aquifer due to the use and climate change, and a diminished cotton crop resulting from that, leading to an increase in price for tampons, etc. So it's important to see the link between climate change and inflation. Climate change is a secret driver of inflation, according to Nicole Corbett, who's quoted in the article. As extreme weather continues to impact crops and production capacity, the costs of necessities will continue to rise. And halfway around the world, over in Pakistan, the world's sixth largest producer of upland cotton, I'm not sure what upland cotton is, there's been severe flooding. It's been made worse by climate change. It's destroyed half the country's cotton crop. Remember, we've been talking climate change for years, many years now, and the goppers, so the Republicans, have long denied it and ignored it. And they now blame inflation on Biden. There are a lot of other factors, and this climate change thing is not going to go away. It's really something that people have to get unified around. and come together. Let me see, what else do I have here today? We like to report on what's going on with strikes, union organizing around the country. And we've had a president that's been very favorable to unions. He did appoint as the Secretary of Labor the former mayor of Boston, Marty Walsh, who left to become the head of the National Hockey League. We've reported on that. But there's a lot of controversy or a little bit of, turmoil about who will get that position. Some are for a woman named Sue, S-U is her last name. Bernie Sanders is pushing that Biden appoint Sarah Nelson, who is the head of the Association of Flight Attendants. There's general agreement among progressives and some other Democrats not to appoint the newly ousted Representative Sean Patrick Maloney, who lost to a Republican in New York. People are not excited about that possibility. On the sports front, we had plenty of sports last week. My cousin Adam James was on, former Northwestern football player who follows all sports. He was on along with our 49th Ward Alderwoman Maria Haddon, and our music producer Lynn Orman was on talking about her trip to the Grammys. So you can get all of that if you go to youtube.com/heartlandmedia/videos. Okay. One announcement I'm going to make. I do a lot of photography, and my photos will be up an exhibit called Crossing Borders, Photos of Mexico, Nicaragua, and Cuba. It will open on the 10th of March at Yuri Eichen Gallery, closing on the 7th of April. So 2 opportunities to come see it. You could also see it anytime by making an appointment with the gallery. Okay, we're going to take a little break. I think we'll hear a little bit of music. And we're coming right back with an old friend and current mayoral candidate here in Chicago, the one and only Chuy Garcia. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned here on the left end of your dial or wherever you are listening or watching to the Live from the Heartland show.
Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Okay, Live from the Heartland. We're here with our first guest, the incomparable, the one, the only, Jesus Chuy Garcia. Good afternoon to you, Chuy.
Hey, glad to join you. Good afternoon to all your listeners.
Yeah, good. Now, I know you've been working real hard in this campaign. It's a good thing you put in a lot of miles running for all those years. And we're really glad to have you on the show because we've known you a long, long time. Back in 2015, you ran for mayor of the great city of Chicago. You were asked to run by the Chicago Teachers Union. You had a really good showing. You forced a runoff. You didn't run again in 2019. What made you decide to enter the race this time in 2023?
Yeah, so the last 4 years in Congress have been a fantastic experience. Bad stuff during the 2 Trump years, and then 2 impeachment trials, the insurrection, and the landmark legislation that we've enacted in Congress, the most significant since the New Deal, that offers a promise to rebuild our infrastructure, invest in the fight against climate change, energy investments for ordinary people, and then, of course, reshoring manufacturing, bringing manufacturing, clean, sustainable green manufacturing to the U.S. and certainly to Chicago. But the city's at a critical juncture. The pandemic and the civil unrest have, of course, shaken us to our core and made us think about what a city needs to be, given all we learned about inequities that the pandemic brought to our attention. And then, of course, the murders of Laquan McDonald and the whole world watched, and then George Floyd again. So Chicago needs to come back from that whole experience, the lockdown and the racial reckoning, and rebuild the city in an equitable manner. I decided to enter the race because of my experience as a longtime progressive in Chicago politics. I was progressive before it sort of became popular and easy to be a progressive. Everybody claims to be a progressive these days. And I think it's an important time to rebuild Chicago and to do it equitably. And I want to use my experience as a community organizer, activist, advocate, policy person to do that. My training in urban planning as an urban planner and practitioner of community development, I think prepares me for this moment. Certainly my experience at the 4 levels of government, city, state, county, and more recently in Congress prepares me to do that. And then my relationships in communities everywhere in Chicago, in the Black community, the North Side, the South Side, everywhere on the lakefront, I think are important things to bring a coalition together, to rebuild the coalition of the 21st century, make it more robust, more inclusive of the growing sectors, especially the Asian community, the LGBTQ community, and of course to advance a progressive agenda that's rooted in equity and justice.
Well, Chuy, I was going to ask you about going back to Harold Washington and the Rainbow Coalition that we had in this town, with progressive groups, radical groups, Black, white, Latino, Asian, Native American, everybody got together around Harold. And I know you've been talking about that a lot. We do have a number of Black candidates. We have one white candidate and maybe just one Latino now in the race for mayor.
Yes.
And the thing that I'm always most concerned about, and I know you care about it a lot, is how we bring all these people together. How do we overcome people like sticking with their own group, so to speak, or their own part of the town and see that we're in this together? How do you go about doing that to happen?
Yeah, for one, we have a history that can be a guide. And I think Harold Washington's election and then such untimely death, just as I think he was bringing and solidifying the coalition, and then the coalition split into so many pieces. This is a time to rebuild, and there couldn't be a better time to rebuild the coalition than now. Everything we learned about inequities during the lockdown, the rise in homelessness, the rise in violence and crime, truly the lessons need to be incorporated that tell us we need to invest in disinvested communities. They are the ones that are usually afflicted with most of the violence and the crime. And if we learned one thing, it's that we've got to address these inequities at the root, at the causes. And we have a chance to do that by rebuilding Chicago and the toolbox that we have, our infrastructure, lots of opportunities to create jobs, to put people to work, to train people to get into trade unions, other jobs in technology and manufacturing as well. Build the pipelines for young people to be able to have good jobs without having to wait, 4 years or 6 years or 8 years of college and then have a big debt, right? That's why we keep fighting for student debt relief in Congress, and Joe Biden is trying to make it happen. But this is a moment to rebuild and to make that coalition even more robust. We have new challenges as well, things that 4 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe weren't as pronounced. Environmental justice and the fight against climate change, how to make our city more resilient for everyone, and how to address the growing homelessness issue. We've got to build more affordable housing for people on the street, for families, for people who have been waiting on the CHA waiting list forever. We need to do things in a different, new, bold way. And this is a moment to rebuild that kind of Chicago. And my hope is that as we struggle for racial justice and for safer communities, that we will have more accountability. We will have more trust building occur in Chicago. We will invest in violence prevention to rebuild Chicago in the manner that these times require.
Chuy Garcia, when I watch TV, I see ads. Some of them are your ads, and I think they've gotten better. Just want to share that. And I also see the mayor attacking you, some other people too. I'm wondering what are the criticisms that people are laying on you, and what is your response to your opponent's criticism of you?
Yeah, the mayor has spent about $1 million falsely attacking me that I took crypto currency dollars, $200,000. Look at my campaign financial reports. I didn't. She claims that happened when I ran for my third term in the Congress in the primary. I was unopposed. Didn't need the money. Didn't ask for the money. I never talked to the gentleman that she references in that commercial. She's seeking to tie me to Mike Madigan, the former Speaker of the House. I endorsed him one time when a candidate put up by Bruce Rauner was sponsoring him, a shadow candidate. I was asked to do that by labor leaders in Illinois because the speaker at that time had been very instrumental in preventing Illinois from becoming a right-to-work state, eroding other worker protections, opposition to increasing the minimum wage, etc. It happened one time. So I've withstood all of these negative attacks and still remain one of the front runners in the race because my history is long. I go back to Harold Washington. I have been fighting the machine longer than anyone else in elective office, with the only exception being Danny Davis, as a matter of fact, my colleague in the United States Congress. And not only have we helped to dismantle the machine, but we've elected a whole bunch of new progressive young people to the city council, to the county board, countywide, to the state legislature, both House and Senate, and even to the United States Congress last year. So I'm very proud of my bench building work to invest in the future. This hasn't been about Chuy Garcia. It's been about the future. It's been about young people and investing in the future and always driving a progressive agenda.
You know, I want to bring up, and so that people know how much experience you've had. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I know you've been an alderman, you've been a state senator, you've been a Cook County commissioner, and you've been a congressman. Did I leave anything out?
Yeah, 10 years. People think I've been in politics for 40 years. Not so. There were 10 years, a hiatus. Probably the most challenging and productive job that I had was building a nonprofit organization that has grown and thrived. Enlace. We opened up schools across the Little Village community. It spread into neighboring communities on the southwest side. We created programs to address violence, especially among young people, gang-related violence that continue to thrive and have also spread across the city. And we collaborated with other practitioners of violence prevention and intervention, getting kids out of that life, out of the violence, and making them come back home, become productive citizens, finish school, go on to colleges and universities, and give back to the community. That is the most rewarding work that I've done, the hardest work that I've done as well. And I'm very proud of it. And those experiences inform my approach to rebuilding Chicago, to building communities, to investing comprehensively in the disinvested communities that have suffered from historic redlining, from restrictive covenants, from people being prevented from being able to own a home and have some wealth building and pass it on to their families, etc. These are the experiences that I've had, and that's why I am the product of a network of community builders across Chicagoland as well.
Well, Chuy, the reason I brought it up is because I think you know how government works more than any candidate. You've had experience at a lot of levels, and you know the intricacies of it and the ins and outs. You are a progressive. So let me ask you, what in your mind, you talked about it earlier, how you were a progressive, before it became popular for a number of people. I'm not sure how others define it. How do you define being a progressive? What does that mean to you?
Being a progressive means acknowledging wrongs, historical wrongs of people, whether it be Native Americans, whether it be African Americans, other groups that have been subjected to discrimination. Certainly women have suffered that discrimination. Asians, Muslims, Jews at different times in history as well. A progressive is someone who has fought against racism in Chicago politics and in institutions as well. Progressive is someone who has fought to open the doors of political empowerment to women because at one time they weren't, and we've made lots of progress. And a progressive is someone who in Chicago politics has always fought against the corrupt machine that used to prevail in Chicago and Cook County, just to mention a few. Progressives today are also looking at the climate crisis and how we save Mother Earth from extinction, from doing further harm to it. And a progressive today is also someone who is involved in reckoning with all the damage we've done to the environment and for environmental justice in environmentally unjust communities across Chicagoland. So some of the major pieces of what it is to be a progressive today, it's grown and changed and evolved over the years.
I'm with you. I'm a progressive too.
Yes, you are.
Let me ask you what you've talked a lot about a lot of your experiences, but is there anything we've left out? What experiences do you bring to the table that really set you apart from the other candidates?
I believe that my history over 4 decades as being someone committed in principle and practice to multiracial, multi-ethnic, cross-faith alliances and collaboration is one very important one. I've been a champion for immigrants' rights, not just for people of Mexican origin, but people from Central America, South America, Haiti, Cubans who may be also coming to the U.S., and certainly the Venezuelans. And I'm proud of that tradition and that legacy because we inherited from the founder of Chicago, Jean-Baptiste Dusable, who, by the way, was had a family with a Native American woman. That's part of Chicago's history. We should celebrate that.
I didn't know that last part. I like that.
Yes, it's a wonderful story. And then Harold Washington, first Black mayor, progressive, first one to say Chicago is a sanctuary city. All are welcome. We ought to have a statue of Harold holding the torch, being our Statue of Liberty in Chicago. And of course, that legacy has grown because, other governors, Democrats and Republicans, have had to rise to that precedent and say, we too are pro-immigrant and welcoming in Illinois, and subsequent mayors in Chicago, even if they weren't progressives, have lived up to that standard. So it is part of Harold's living legacy 40 years after he left Congress, ran for mayor, and became the city's first progressive and Black mayor.
We like Harold a lot, and we remember him well, and he's real inspirational. And if you're the mayor, or no matter what happens, if that statue is going to be built, I want to be in on it. That's a great thing. Downtown.
And Rudy, yes, and Michael, let's not forget Rudy Lozano, critical piece of the Rainbow Coalition in 1983, killed a month after Harold was sworn in as mayor, labor leader, community activist, a visionary, a very courageous individual, my compadre and mentor as well. And we are approaching the 40th anniversary of his assassination. So this year is full of important homages that we need to pay to those who came before us.
Chuy, this is great. I got one more question. This will air, stream, YouTube, etc., on Friday and Saturday, the 25th Saturday. So the election will be on Tuesday, 6 days from today when we're recording. How do you see things? How's it look? I see polls. Don Rose comes on. He'll be on right after you are. And he talks up a good game around where you're at. I see the mayor has got you low in her poll. Where do you see the race right now? And
What a
how's it looking?
coincidence.
And what are you going to do for the next 6 days?
Yeah, I feel good about our prospects for a runoff on Tuesday. Proud to have Don Rose as one of my supporters. He's been a mentor. He knows a lot about history and the fight for progressive independent representation and empowerment in Chicago. He helped bring Dr. King to Chicago. So Don, another giant amongst us and from whom we've learned. No, I feel good about Tuesday. We're working hard to identify our voters, drive them to the polls. But I'm also looking after Tuesday at Wednesday. And if I am in a runoff, I am going to work very hard to rebuild a coalition that we need. A coalition guarantees that we don't leave anyone behind as we seek to recover from the pandemic, as we seek to recover from the racial reckoning and incorporate the lessons that say that Chicago can only become a true world-class city when it leaves no one behind, when it is being rebuilt with equity and investing in communities that have been left behind for too long. The only way forward is through multiracial, multi-ethnic coalitions that are rooted in equity and justice for all.
Well, we are a rainbow kind of city, and we are probably the city that has larger concentrations of more diverse racial, ethnic, religious groups, perhaps than anywhere. And the goodness of the city, the future of the city, as well as the country, really depends on the kind of work we do on bringing people together. And I think you could do a really great job of doing that, Chuy. You've done it so far. You are inspirational, and I'm glad to call you my friend. And I'll be looking at the election on Tuesday with everything I got, and Wednesday ready to work again.
No, thank you, Michael. And my only wish and hope is that after Tuesday, we will come together and get to work on building a big, powerful coalition that thrusts Chicago forward with equity, unity, and justice for all.
Well, you're doing good in the world, Chuy Garcia, and we need all the good that people can do. And thank you for being our leader. See you later.
Thank you, Michael. Take care. Great to be in the Heartland. Adios.
Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
And we're back with more Live from the Heartland. This is number 141 since the time of the pandemic began, and it is for the week of February 25th. It is our pre-election show. Those who have been tuned in know that we just talked with Chuy Garcia, who is optimistic about his opportunities and chances in this election, and certainly filled us in on a lot of detail about things that he believes, things he's done and would like to do. And now we bring in someone who Chuy called a mentor to him, and I would have to say it's someone I look to for leadership and certainly around elections and politics in a lot of ways, the one and only Don Rose. Good afternoon to you, Don.
How are you?
We're doing good. I'm in New York. I'm sitting in my kid's old house, or not old house, kind of modern in this apartment. There's a sculpture of mine in the corner. So our guests are in Chicago. And so is the engineer. I'm here in New York City, city of my birth. And I'm really glad that you would join us today. And I'll just tell the listeners right now that we twisted your arm, and you're going to come on again next week and give us a little analysis of what happens. Our election is coming up on Tuesday, the 28th, not too many days away. And Don, why don't you fill us in on how it's going, what you see, what you're feeling, what you're reading, what the polls are telling you in your magical way of interpreting them.
Well, I've been trying to keep track of polling, which has been very kind of wild in the course of this. I think last time I was on here, I spoke of two polls that were known to be independent and known to be by qualified researchers that were very close to each other. And I haven't, subsequent to those, I'll reiterate what was in them. Subsequent to those two, I've seen one that purports to be an independent poll that has a substantially different takeout, and I have no way of judging it because we're not getting great reporting on this. Our papers, are trying, but it's very thin, and the fact that the Sun Times and WBEZ did take a serious poll was useful, and probably the single most useful thing they've done. Now, those two polls in which I have some confidence showed the top three were Paul Vallis, Lori Lightfoot, and Chuy Garcia. In one, Vallis was ahead, Chuy was in second place, and Lori third place. In the other, Lori was ahead, Chuy was in second place, and Vallis was out. But I believe that Vallis is, on the basis of all the other information I can gather, including this third supposedly independent poll that I can't vouch for, that showed Vallis in first place. I believe Vallis is going to wind up in first place here. He has run a fantastically good media campaign, and I would say it's second only. The only runner-up to his quality of a campaign is the stuff Brandon has done. In all honesty, I think Chuy Garcia's media has been serviceable, but not brilliant, and almost coasting rather than giving strong reasons for people who are not for him yet to be for him. So, I mean, that's would lead me to say it's possible that he is dropping down because he's still under great attack from Lori.
Yeah.
And who was attacking Brandon also in her commercials, which suggests to me that her polls are showing that they're both serious threats to her coming into the primary, into the runoff. As we know, I think we've said this several times, on the 28th, the top two, presuming nobody gets 50%, which is almost impossible, the top two candidates will run off. So,
Don, how do you think the people have been behaving themselves in these races? I just off of the ads that you were talking about, the mayor has been a little vitriolic, I think, attacking Chuy as a sellout and Brandon as I forget what she called him. But I also thought, what's that?
A police defunder.
I also told Chuy in our interview that I thought his ads had gotten better, that they were at the beginning. I mean, he got, he had that ad walking with the police, but then now he's talking more community, multi-ethnic, multiracial, rainbow-esque kind of stuff. And I'm just wondering how, in general, you think the campaign has gone as all of these people together in terms of the way they've dealt with each other.
Well, for the most part, we haven't seen Chuy attack anybody except Lori on issues. And when you're running against an incumbent, you've got to give reasons. But it's been clean. Brandon, I think, overstepped a little bit trying to, not in a commercial, but in a couple of speeches, trying to say that Chuy was not a true progressive. Which I think is a tactical as well, a tactical mistake, as well as simply not being true. So it's hard to say whether he has really moved up into contention with the top three. The best of my insight is that he's still behind the top three by a couple of points. But people are beginning to consolidate now. There's something like at least 18% undecided. And we're coming into the kind of weekend where people finally do make up their minds. So with that kind of an undecided vote, all I can say is that up to this point, it looks like it's going to be a runoff between Vallis and Chuy, but that can be tumbled and tumbled totally in the next 4 days.
What's your sense of what this weekend will be like, not only in Chuy's campaign, the mayor's, but all of them? A lot of activity, a lot of knocking on doors. Any sense of how many people have already voted, early voting? What's it look like?
Well, all the early votes are setting records, which suggests that we're going to wind up with a historic, it won't be a first, but we'll get over 40% turnout by the end of the thing. One can say a lot of people are just people who would ordinarily vote on election day are just taking time to do it beforehand. But the numbers there's a lot of interest in this, whether it's interest in specific candidates in some cases or anti-interest. A lot of people are coming out because they want to vote against Lori because they're angry at her. Some people have developed a following, and certainly the teachers union is working overtime and spending overtime on Brandon's behalf. From my historic knowledge, Chuy should have a very, very good ground game over this weekend.
Yeah,
he's known for that. He has been able to elect numerous candidates against the machine and built, an entire progressive structure throughout the city council, ward committeemen, state reps, state senators. And this is due to more to the ground game than to his commercials, I would say, at this point. He's using a lot of Instagram, which I don't get, so I can't really judge most of those Instagram social media things. But it's it's really I have to say it's up in the air. I like to make firm prognostications, but when you're going into a race that is this close, all three candidates and perhaps four are within the margin of error, and there is, as I said, still a large undecided vote, and that suggests we could see something unusual. The only thing I'd say for sure is that Vallis is going to be one of the top two and probably in first place.
What are your tell us a little bit about Vallis, because I really disliked him, particularly over the privatization and charter schools. He went to 3 different cities to run school districts. He's perennial runner. What's different this time with him in his long cashmere coat and his ads on TV with a multinational or multiracial ethnic group of people around him?
What's different here? He has a long history of failure, and this Tribune today finally came out writing about all the failed things that he's done everywhere he's gone. He claims to have makes false claims about his successes in New Orleans, in Connecticut, other places on the East Coast, that is just plain bull. Here in Chicago, he was a pretty good financial guy before they made him head of the schools. He had no business being made head of the schools because he was not an educator. He did not come from that, and so he picked up on what was then known as school reform, education reform, which was centered on private charter schools, proliferating charter schools, and high stakes testing, which is the exact opposite of what we needed. It destroys and has continued to destroy public school systems all over. But he just grasped onto this because that was the easiest thing around, and Rich Daley didn't give a damn, and Rahm didn't give a damn. So that's his story, and his long resume, as long as you don't look and see what really happened in any of those systems. He was practically ridden out of town on a rail in Connecticut, and almost as that bad in New Orleans.
Yeah. Well,
So-
how do you think the media has been in general? You talked about the Tribune finally bringing up some stuff about Vallis, and we talked a little bit earlier about Chuy Garcia's ads. I'm thinking about a lot of young people, particularly my youngest two sons. They don't watch the news on TV. They don't read the Sun Times or the Tribune. They do a lot of social media, and I'm sure Instagram. What's your sense of the media on this race and how they've covered it, and has it been fair?
Well, I think I said earlier, I don't really think it's been particularly good. They should have been looking into Vallis much earlier. The Tribune endorsed him already, but of course that's because he picked up basically the Republican, what Republican people and money there is, and he's allied with the FOP. These are all
order of the police.
Yeah, no, I call them the fascist officers patrol.
Well, some of them are.
And they should have looked into him much earlier and put out more information. Now, what we don't know is how the social media are playing it all. I just can't keep up with all the social media. I don't see it consistently enough. I don't get it from some people, and I can dig into it here and there. But not being a social media kid, I may be missing out on something that's going on. And as we know, newspaper reading is down. There's some TV, but the TV has done virtually no investigating here. They give you little snatches of each forum. They don't really do any significant analysis. So overall, I have to give the total media, outside of a couple of articles that have come up, like today's very late takeout on Vallis, I have to give them a C-.
Okay, well, you think it'll be a runoff between two people? Chuy has a good shot, as does the mayor, and as does Vallis, and Brandon is within the margin of error. So there's really not much more we know, except those of you who have a particular candidate you favor. You've got a few more days left to really work hard at it to get the people out. Don, I'm going to switch now because you do a beautiful column every week, which I don't know how people can find it if they don't have your email and you don't have theirs. But
well, I do put it on Facebook every Monday morning.
Okay, I don't see it there. I see it on in my mailbox.
Well, you're on my list. You're on my list.
Oh, I get it. I read it. And you just most recently talked about a guy who I would have to say is not only mean and divisive, but just a really horrible human being. And I'm talking about the governor of Florida. And I think you had a piece this week about Ron DeSantis. You want to share some of that?
Yes, DeSantis is very clearly, if you look at all of his statements and edicts he's issued, and his control over the legislature there, which is totally in his hands, is clearly planning to be running for president as the leading culture warrior. And that means uh, old-fashioned racism and old-fashioned homophobia. He is your leading guy, along with a number of well-known people like Governor Noem and Governor Abbott and so on, campaigning against critical race theory, CRT, which is a college level kind of course and program that's usually done at graduate school level in college, at law school. But they have managed to turn virtually any honest history, racial history, Black history, that's taught anywhere in the schools as CRT. And CRT these days, which now also incorporates the word woke, whatever that means now. At one time, woke meant you were alert to certain issues in labor and in race relations, but they are using the terms CRT and woke as euphemisms for the good old N-word that they can't use, but it gives them a perfect cover. And this is the way the Republicans are planning to win. They can't win on economics. They have no program to speak of. Any of the candidates, assumed candidates for the presidency, and DeSantis is the most sophisticated, because he has all the power in Florida. He's the most sophisticated, and he is identifying himself as culture warrior #1, and doing everything short of calling out the N-word or for gay people the F word. They're focusing in on the most difficult and troubled sexual identity group. They are into trans people. They know that they can't attack gays because there's just too many gay people around now who are known, and families and so on. So they focus in on trans people, but in itself is another way of calling out what, as they called the law in Florida, don't say gay.
Yeah.
Saying don't say gay because they know they're going to say gay, and it's very bad. It's
another word that they oppose and they take it out is systematic. Is like systematic racism.
Systemic,
yeah, systemic. I'm sorry. Well, we have a few minutes left. You want to try and give us a little understanding of why you think Florida has moved so far to the right? I mean, they have all kind of people down in Florida. There is definitely some strong right-wing contingencies in the Cuban, Venezuelan, immigrant community. There's probably a lot of plenty of other white conservatives, but it just seems like a little over the top that he would decide to just attack everything, that a lot of people worked up for, like women's rights, equality by races and stuff, being fair to people, educating people. He's just totally trying to turn it over. And to me, he appears to be such an obviously terrible person. I couldn't understand why even the right wing would vote for a guy like him.
Well, he was aligned with Trump and trying to become the new Trump, and he's more dangerous than Trump because he's smarter than Trump. I would say that the key element in turning Florida where it is the influx of Venezuelans as well as other Cubans, that have traditionally been right wing. And that's tipped the numbers more and more. And the for some reason or another, the Jewish vote seems to have declined there. And I haven't been able to find out exactly what's there, but the losing the more and more of the Latino vote was the crux of it, and that comes from the assault on socialism. The immigrants there, the Venezuelans and still Cubans and others who are coming in there are people who are trying to quote escape socialism wherever they are, and are changing the tenor of that state, which only almost 6 or 8 years ago voted twice for Obama. And
do you think that he will moderate as he tries to run for the presidency on the Gopper ticket? Do you think he will mitigate his extremism, because he's going to be dealing with? He has to get some other states. I mean, I don't think he'll win, but I don't know.
Well, he has a lot of compatriots who are who would like to be him. So it's hard to say whether they will fight each other off. Like I am more against them than you are. I'm a stronger culture warrior than you. Like Noam from Dakota, and Abbott, and Sarah Huckabee. People are all.
We got a lot of bad ones out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of support for that kind of movement, and they have to probably exhibit the most of it to win the primary, and then they've got the general to worry about.
Well, Don, I really appreciate you coming on. You've been heroic in coming on and being our guest 2 times in the last month or so, and you've agreed to come back on the day after the election, which is the 28th. Everybody be alert. We'll be back and we'll talk to you in a few days, brother. I hope we have some really great news.
I hope we have some good news to impart that one too. Good.
Okay. You have been listening to the Live from the Heartland show. I'm Michael James. I've been your host today. And next week, we're going to have Don Rose. It'll be our show for the week of March 4th. And there definitely will be a runoff here in Chicago. So we'll be talking about that and many other things. I want to thank all of you who tuned in to listen or to watch Live from the Heartland for the week of February 25th. And I want to thank Hal James, our engineer, as well as our guests, Chuy Garcia and Don Rose, as well as people who helped make the show possible, Katie Hogan, Lynn Orman-Weiss, and Tom Clark. Remember to do good in the world, because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. Have a great week, and if you haven't voted already in Chicago, make sure you do. Over and out.
Are you doing the best you can? Over the mountain, under the big blue sky, you got a dream awaiting. I can see it in your eye. It may not come easy, but you know you've got a friend. I'll be by your side the entire ride. Just let me hear you say amen. Are you doing? Are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing? Are you doing the best you can? Tout donne, est-ce que tu donnes le meilleur de toi-même parce que tu l'aimes? Tu donnes, est-ce que tu donnes le meilleur de toi-même si tu l'aimes? Tu donnes, est-ce que tu donnes le meilleur de toi-même quand tu l'aimes? Are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing?